He eating us up right now.
Hmm. I'm taking it.
Okay, look, I'm gonna show y'all how to do yoga. Yoga is very improvisational. Okay, so um, sitting in a chair. Okay, so you got your clients. Put them in a circle. Sit in a chair. Um, let their feet sort of separate a little bit so that there's a gap here. Take your right finger, take your right index finger, find your navel. Sometimes people are going to lift up their shirt. You don't have to, tell them don't lift up their shirt. Just tell them to, find their navel from out here. So my navel is here. So when I put my right hand here, I'm going to breathe. With my left hand here, I'm going to breathe into this area. So in the beginning, you may not be able to have your breath. You may breathe in it, but your breath may still be up here. But your goal is to be able to breathe down into the abdomen, right? So when you breathe in, expand your abdomen, inhale through your nose, hold your breath, open your mouth, breathe out through your mouth. Close your mouth, reset your body. So when I say reset your body, remember you have the inhalation, you pause after the inhalation, you have the exhalation, you pause after the exhalation. That's rule of four breathing. It's very simple. You don't count it four, you don't do none of that, counting none of that. You just inhale, hold, exhale, hold. The hold is what I call pausing. Okay. And so you just make sure that you do that because it requires you to think and to focus and to concentrate to divide your breath into those four parts. Okay. And so the inhalation expanded the abdomen, hold the breath, open the mouth, slowly exhale. Close the mouth, breathe in slowly. Hold the breath, open the mouth, breathe out slowly. Close the mouth, reset your body. Breathe in again slowly. Hold the breath, open your mouth, breathe out. So the key is slow your inhalation down, slow your exhalation down. Your breath is not going to necessarily be as slow as my breath because I've been doing this longer than you. So breathe in as slowly as you can for you. Breathe out as slowly as you can for yourself. When you're teaching other people, try to find a mid-range of a mid-range at which you are bringing the breath in and releasing the breath out. Okay, so don't try to go real slow because they're not going to be able to keep up. But don't try to go real fast because then you're going to have them breathing improperly. So try to find that midpoint. And remember to just divide the breath into those four parts. Now, after you have done the cleansing breath, Hands on the abdomen. Place the hands here on the thighs. And then breathe in and out only through the nose. Remember to keep the tip of the tongue connected upward towards the roof of the mouth. So as you sit here, you're breathing in, pause, breathe out through the nose, and then pause. Breathe in through the nose, pause, breathe out through the nose, pause. Okay? Do that for about 3 minutes, 5 minutes, sitting in a chair. Okay? Now from here, a forward bending pose from the chair. What you don't want to do is have people come up on the edge of the chair like this and sort of tilt. So, and you don't necessarily want them to be all the way back in the chair. So let's sort of scoot up a little bit, not too much. Okay. And then breathe in, exhale. Breathe in, exhale. A little bit further, relaxing. Breathe in, expand the abdomen. Exhale, contract the abdomen. Relax the neck, relax the shoulders. Place the hands on the thighs, right above the knee. Inhale, push against your legs. Come up as you inhale. And then once your back is straight, exhale and relax. Breathe in and breathe out. Again, breathe in through the nose. As you slowly exhale, let the hands slide down the legs. Come down with the hands towards the floor. Relax the neck and put the chest down. Put the chin down towards the chest. And relax the upper back. Relax the shoulders. And breathe in. And slowly breathe out. Breathe in. Slowly exhale. Place the hands on the legs. So we put the hands here. Why? Because we don't want them to strain their back. So you breathe in, you push up. Push against the legs as you inhale up. And then exhale. And relax. Okay? And then breathe. After you finish that, do that forward bend 3 times. After the 3rd time, breathe in slowly, breathe out slowly. And just the fact that they've done that movement, it is going to cause different physiological changes to take place in the body, but they're going to feel those changes. They're going to feel better. They're going to feel different. Okay? Now, let's talk a little bit more about modifications to the breathing. Okay? So a lot of times people are dehydrated because most people do not drink enough water. They eat a lot of cheese and just a whole bunch of bad stuff. And so their nostrils are clogged up. Their forehead is clogged up. So then if you tell them to inhale through the nose and then exhale out through the nose, a lot of times they're going to have problems doing that because they say, oh, I can't breathe through my nose. Oh, and they get flustered and frustrated. So you can have them continue to breathe, to use the mouth to exhale. Never use the mouth to inhale, but you can allow them to exhale through the mouth until they get acclimated to the proper breathing, and then they can use the nostrils to inhale and exhale. Okay? So from here, you breathe in, and then you open the mouth, you say, and you exhale down into the position. And then when you come up, you inhale, and then exhale. So if you notice people having difficulty breathing, it's okay to make a modification, where you can have them exhale through the mouth. Okay? But always try to get them to breathe in and out through the nose. But if it's impossible for a person to breathe in through their nose, then you might even have to compromise even more and let them inhale through the mouth and exhale out through the mouth. But your goal is to move them to the point where they can become nostril breathers. Okay? And so that is cleansing breath and Sahul pose in a sitting position, and then forward bending pose in a sitting from the chair. Okay, and coming back up, right? So that right there, you got a whole class right there, especially if you're working with your clients. If you just did what we just did with them, they're going to be different people. Okay? It doesn't take that much. So now, when we do triangle pose, what are the benefits of triangle pose? Triangle pose, so I'm just illustrating this point. So don't have to worry about it. When you do triangle pose, you're doing this posture here. This is your basic triangle pose, right? Breathe in, exhale. Inhale, exhale, come up, and turn your foot back to the front. That's your basic triangle pose from standing position. So, what is that? Orange peel. Somebody dropped the orange peel on me. So, when you're doing that triangle pose, what's happening to your body? You're lengthening. What is this muscle right here called? That's called your latissimus dorsi. So this is a major muscle in your back. It's a major part of your back. So from behind, it's all of this stuff up in there. Then you have your ribs here. You have your ribs. Your ribs protect your lungs in there. And then the ribs are like my fingers. If my fingers were your ribs, and then when you stretch the fingers apart, you're stretching this muscle in between your ribs called the intercostal muscle. Okay? And so when you go into triangle pose, you are lengthening the muscles and you are actually lengthening the lungs. Okay? So if that's the effect and the goal of doing the triangle pose, how do I get that same effect in a sitting position? Okay? So one thing you can do is just sit, put your arm down, rotate it out, breathe in, breathe out, put your arm next to your ear. Inhale, Exhale just a little bit. You don't have to go all the way. Exhale and feel you feel that nice little stretch in there. Inhale. You always exhale out, exhaling out of the pose. Let your arm come down. And you're going to feel this flow of energy. Same thing on the opposite side. Rotate. When I say rotate, I'm talking about from the shoulder out. Breathe in. And then breathe out. Notice I'm taking this hand over here and I'm exhaling. Release. Not too far. Breathe in. I can even exhale to the mouth. Stretch. Inhale up. Exhale and feel the energy moving through the arm as the arm comes down. Okay? One more time. Left hand to the right leg, to the right thigh. Right arm stretches down. Rotate the arm out. Breathe in and lift the arm up towards the ear. And then exhale. Through the mouth if you need to. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale up. Exhale down. And then switch. Inhale. Exhale, release. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale up. Exhale down. Okay? You're doing yoga, sitting in a chair. And then when you do both sides evenly, come back to here and breathe. Okay? So that's yoga, sitting in a chair. Now, if you graduate onto the floor, so now you're on the mat. And you do your sitting forward bending pose, right? Bend the knees. Put the hands in the back of the knees. Sit up straight. Extend the arms. Rotate. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Reach for the feet. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale up. Legs flat. Exhale. Okay? That accomplishes that, we did the same thing sitting in a chair, except now you're going to get a little bit more work in, but it's the same basic movement. And so it's giving people the same benefit. Once you do that, you do this. Sit down like this. Come down onto your forearms. Come down onto your back. Put the back of your head to the mat. Bring your right thigh. Hands around your leg. Pull your thigh in. Release your lower back. So when you get to this point with people, these people, they're going to feel a tremendous relief from doing this thigh to the chest pose. It's the same thing. So this is thigh to the chest pose. It opens up the lower back. It opens up the hip. Breathe in, breathe out. Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, and stretch it out. Okay? Back of the head to the mat. Bend the right knee, put the right foot down, bring the left foot down. Everything is systematic. Bring both thighs to the chest, both hands around the legs, wrap the arms around the legs, breathe in, exhale, pull the thighs in, bring the head up, bring the head down, bring the hands down to right above the ankles, and put your feet flat. Now, a lot of times people are not going to be able to grab hold of the ankles. But let's say they're able to grab hold of the legs right above the ankles. You lift the lower back, middle back, and squeeze shoulder blades together. This is called the spider, right? Come back down. Suppose they can't grab the leg. Put the arms down next to the body. Lift the lower back, lift the middle back. Exhale and squeeze. Breathe in. Breathe out. Breathe in. Breathe out. Inhale. Exhale and ease the spine down to the mat. Okay? And then from there, after you finish that movement, then you have created a situation within the body where you can go into a deep relaxation. So come down onto the back. Place the hand. You can just place the hands on the stomach, on the abdominal area. Relax the upper arms and just breathe. Relax. Inhale. Exhale. You're going to find that people tend to almost fall asleep after they finish that movement. Okay? And then to come out, to come back up, you can just have them bring their legs together. Bend the right knee, bend the left knee, push your hips over to the right, turn over to the left. Use the hand to push up so there's no strain in the back. So if you're working with people who are a little bit older and so on and so forth, you want to have them have an easier way to sit up. And that's a whole yoga class there. 30 minutes, 45 minutes, something like that, even an hour. Okay, you would just, expand it out some. But that's your basic parameters for a class. And then if you want to finish up with the spinal twist. So these basic postures. In yoga, you have forward bending poses, backward bending poses, and you have twisting poses. That's the main thing that you do in yoga. It's just different. It's just many, many variations of bending forward, bending backward, and twisting. So a spinal twist is going to be here, 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 wrap the arm, turn to the side, exhale and twist. Squeeze the belly out the way, and then work on the neck. Turn to the front, turn to the center, turn to the back. Lift, release, inhale, exhale. Spinal twist. Very simple. Bend the knee. Hand around the knee, hand around the ankle, pull it in. Sit up straight. Inhale, exhale, reach around, turn, right hand down, twisting your spine. Once you twist the lower back, middle back, and then upper back, then you turn your head to the left, turn your head to the center, turn your head to the back, lift, inhale, exhale, spinal twist. So now you've already done the basic variations of yoga: forward bend, backward bend, twisting motion. Okay, and because when you think about yoga, you think about divided the body, you got two axes, you know, like a cross, right? You got a horizontal axis, well, you got a vertical axis. So that's a line that divides your body between left and right. And then you have another line here that divides your body between up and down. So this is your, I guess, what is this, horizontal, going this way. So your body bends forward and up. And you got this way, vertical, where your body turns this way and that way. Okay. So that's your basic. So when you're teaching people, just think in these terms, these very simple terms. You want to get somebody to bend forward. You want to get them to bend backward. You want to get them to twist, you know. So whatever, so you can invent your own movements to get people to get into those positions. You might be working with somebody who weighed 98 pounds, and you might be working with somebody who weighed 350 pounds. So how you going to figure out how to accommodate those people? When I was in Houston one time, I did a little outdoor festival. There was one man, he weighed 550 pounds. And I had to, you know, but I had him doing yoga. You know, you just have to figure out what you got to do. You know, you have to improvise, but you got to understand the dynamics of the body and the dynamics of the movements that we have available to us. So now you seeing doing it in a chair, you seeing doing maybe basic simple things on the floor. Okay. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be good enough to make it happen. In Kemetic yoga, we have teachers who are, we Black people. So we have people got big booty, big this, big that. We have people who are slender, people who are in between. We got all kind of different body types. And one of the problems with mainstream yoga is that it's run by these little skinny white girls, and then they thinking that, oh, you are not skinny enough like we are to do yoga properly, and all this kind of crazy type of stuff. So that's why a lot of Black people tend to not want to go into those studios where they feel ostracized and all that kind of stuff. So we want to be able to accommodate people because we know that our people have many different shapes and sizes, and we don't want to make people feel bad because of their however their body is made, you know. Um, okay, so questions? Any questions?
No, sir.
Nope.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So do you feel more prepared to do what you got to do?
Yes.
I do. Yeah.
Okay. And don't feel nervous. I gotta do all this stuff. Just do. You do the best you can. Okay. So I know time is moving, but I'm gonna briefly go over some stuff. Where Here it is. Okay. Slideshow. A minute. Okay, can you all see my screen okay?
Yes.
Okay, so there is this little presentation is called Refuting Irrational Ideas. And there's a folder in your training materials, which is called Additional Resources, I think is the name of it. and it has this, and so you could use this for yourself if you're going to do presentation and stuff, right? So supposedly this Greek man named Epictetus said this. He said, a man is not disturbed by events, but by the view he takes of them. Okay. So that means that a person is not really becoming stressed out by things that are happening in his or her life, but because of the attitude or the view that they take of those events, the way that we think, the way that we perceive, the way that we interpret different things. Okay. So so it's like a lot of the things that these different positive mental attitude people have been talking about for over 100 years of, and longer than that really, but um, in terms of changing the way that you think, changing your attitude, and how this is going to help you to become more successful. And so that's what we're trying to do with our people. Um, so So we have these things called irrational ideas, and those irrational ideas are things that all of us have, and they have an origin. And so we know that as people who have undergone the Middle Passage, you know, um, a century of Jim Crow, um, what you call it, the prison, the school to prison pipeline, and just continuously, all the different things that we have that we as a collective have experienced. We know that we have experienced trauma, and this trauma has had a profound effect upon how we think, how we perceive things. And so we often have thoughts that sometimes are actually legitimate thoughts, that other people may call us irrational, but some of our irrational ideas are actually rooted in the reality of our life. But then it still gets down to the point of how do we deal with those things? How do we navigate the world in spite of those different experiences of those different events? So we know that personal early life trauma that we have has an effect upon um, the ideas that we have as we get older. So, we have many experiences where we may experience discrimination, we may experience rejection, we may experience abuse of various forms. Those are all things that are traumatic early experiences. Then we got our cultural conditioning. What is cultural conditioning? When you live within a particular society, and all the images that you see of yourself are negative. Even to this day, when I watch, I turn on TikTok and Instagram, and I see a preponderance of videos of just people dancing and just doing just dancing, and it's like, okay, that's good. But we only see ourselves portrayed in certain negative ways. We see ourselves portrayed on TV, in movies as being drug addicts, drug dealers, prostitutes, um, dishonest people, lazy people, so on and so forth. When I was a child, there was a program called Amos and Andy. I don't know if you all have heard of Amos and Andy, but they was less like these. Amos and Andy was these two buffoonish black men who instead of trying to work and make money, they was always trying to scam people. They always, they was, and they had the way that they was talking, and they was always smoking cigars, it was just a clown show. Okay. So you got your social conditioning. So everything I'm saying now is part of the social conditioning. So the whole social order that we live under, where we are denied resources, we are denied access to the same things that other people have. Um, after World War, you know, after the Great Depression and after World War II, they had created programs where people can um, get loans to buy, to build a house, get loans or to where they can buy land, um, or even be granted land for free. But black people was excluded from those things. Okay, and there was times in our history where a black person could not look a white person in the face. They had a law against it. It was called malicious eyeballing. So just think if you grew up in an era where you can't even look a white man in the face. And then if you look at um, some of the things that that's going on right now with the ICE. I saw a video where a white guy was with a white ICE person. I don't want to call him an officer or agent or nothing. They just a cracker. But he was telling somebody, if you raise your voice to me, I'm going to take your voice away, you know. And, that's what, he was talking to a white person, but that's what we've been told either explicitly or implicitly by the way that the social order has been set up. We've been hearing that all the time. So this is the conditioning. This is the social conditioning that we have undergone as a consequence of our existence in this society. You know. Um, so then we have the media, the way that we are portrayed in the media. The media has been a tool of our oppression. We have been systematically portrayed in a certain way within the media as a means of exploiting us, as a means of getting us to adhere to certain types of lifestyles, getting us to consume or spend our money in certain ways that are not beneficial to us, but are beneficial to others. To buy certain types of products. Like they have certain commercials that are targeted towards us. When you watch McDonald's commercials, they always have a preponderance of black people in the McDonald's and the Burger Kings and the Wendy's and the Church's Chicken and all the KFC, because they target those types of products to us, to the Schlitz malt liquor beer, the Bull, and all this kind of stuff, because they're constantly marketing these type of products to us, and these products have a deleterious effect upon our health, both physically and mentally. And then we have maladaptive responses to stress. So when we feel stress, when we feel some of the effects of this type of conditioning that we're undergoing, we have instead of saying, okay, I'm gonna make myself feel better by going to the gym. I'm gonna go run. I'm gonna go lift some weights. I'm gonna do some yoga. I'm gonna do some Tai Chi, some meditation. I'm gonna go and eat some healthy food. We do just the opposite. We become sedentary. We eat bad food. We go get some KFC, which is what the intention for us to do. We go buy pizza and we get drunk. We smoke weed. We take heroin, fentanyl, whatever it is, whatever they make available to us. That's what we do. So those are maladaptive responses to stress. We got cultural social conditioning, which is pretty much, things that I've been going through, oppression, a legacy of slavery. That legacy of slavery, just because we are not physically in a state of chattel slaves at this point in time, that legacy remains with us, right? We are still being affected by those things on both a psychological level, and so, and also on a physical level, even on a genetic level. We have our bodies have experienced um, um, genetic damage that is now being passed on from generation, intergenerational genetic damage that is being passed on from one generation to the next, because of the pressure, because of the experiences that we're having, racism, again, inequality, the inability to get resources. When a person cannot get the resources that they need and that they deserve, and they know that there is a systematic um, force that's against them, then that makes them feel a sense of hopelessness. And that sense of hopelessness is intentional to get people to give up, to get people to not have the resiliency that they need to have, both psychologically, physically, and on a cultural level, on a social level. And so that racism is designed to do those things. You have sexism. Black women, for example, they get a double whammy. They experience the racism, plus they experience the sexism, even within our own culture. Our own culture has a certain level of misogyny against our own women, and so that's there. You look at the church, you look at how women have been traditionally treated by the church. You see how religion treats women. You see the the distorted messages that are supposed to be in the Bible. Somebody told me, I told a friend of mine, I said, well, the Bible is some BS. He said, the Bible ain't BS. He said, it's the way that they are presenting the information in the Bible to people. I said, okay. So that's what I'm going to start saying. So the religions and the way that these people who are interpreting religion to us, they are distorting the role of women. They distorted the stories in the Bible and making it seem as if the woman was the culprit in the Garden of Eden and caused the fall of man, and so on and so forth. So you got to look at these things and see what the origins of this sexism and misogyny is. Okay, you got classism, so even within our own community, we have class discrimination. We have various societies amongst Black people that are designed to keep other Black folks, at a lower level and to exploit them. You got consumerism, media exploitation. um, there is there was a man named Edward Bernays. Edward Bernays was from the 1920s and 30s, and he was the nephew of Sigmund Freud. And Edward Bernays, if you go and study, look him up, Bernays, Edward Bernays. He created what's called the consumer culture. And so the consumer culture is really, when you go and you really do your study, really go and do your research, you're going to find that the consumer culture is the foundation of control and exploitation of human beings all over this planet, because we are controlled, and people make profit from us. The corporations and the oligarchs and the billionaires, they make profit from us because they move us to consume certain things. We got to have the latest TV, the latest shoes, the latest this, the latest that, and so on and so forth. So we are always chasing something that becomes a symbol of our status, through this consumer culture. Okay. And so every movie that we watch has a subliminal message to it that is moving us to desire certain products, to desire certain lifestyle, um, to view ourselves in a negative manner if we do not achieve a certain way of living that is being presented in these movies and so on and so forth. Um, and all kind of different forms of discrimination. So we got examples of conditioning, consistent negative portrayal, as we know what that is, systematic lack of opportunity, targeted media exploitation, unrealistic expectations, stereotyping. We know these things are pretty much self-evident that this is the type of conditioning that we are experiencing. So when we working with our clients are they become our clients because the degree of damage that these type of conditions have created has affected them in a much worse way. That's why they have broken down. They don't have the resiliency. They don't have the ability to withstand this onslaught of these different forces that are coming at them. And so they get to the level of their social status where they have to become clients of the social systems, clients of the community organizations, clients of the public health and social service agencies of the country and of the city and the state and the county and local municipalities and so on and so forth, right? And so they are in the condition that they are in because they have succumbed to these different forces. And then you have ethnocentrism, which we know is prevalent throughout this country. Um, so within the onslaught of all these different forces, we all as human beings, we have something called self-talk. And so self-talk is the inner voice that you use to explain experiences as they occur in your life. So you can pay attention to yourself and you can see that whenever you have a certain type of experience, you can hear a voice in your head, and that voice is talking to you, you know. And so it may not be a voice that's literally talking, but you are receiving information and interpretation of experiences that you are having as they are occurring. Okay. And so when you have an experience, you are learning to, you are perceiving that experience as either being good, bad, dangerous, um, whatever the nature of that experience is. And you are often interpreting what is the nature, what is the quality of that experience. Is it dangerous? Is it helpful? Is somebody insulting me? So on and so forth, right? And so you are doing a constant evaluation of each experience that you have as you go through it, right? So that's the way the mind actually works. And so that experience, that interpretation of experiences as they occur is called self-talk. That's a self-talk, that's a conversation that's going on inside of you. So almost every waking hour, we engage in self-talk. If self-talk is accurate and in touch with reality, we function well. If it is irrational or untrue, then we experience stress and emotional disturbance. Okay. And in reality, even if the self-talk can be accurate and in touch with reality, and it can still cause stress and emotional disturbance because you are actually experiencing something that is happening to you in reality. Okay. So when I put this together, the information I was working with was sort of like, had a little bias to it where it was tending to say that when people have these types of um, um, out of touch experiences that they become unrational and untrue. But you can have a negative experience because it was a negative experience. It doesn't have to be irrational and untrue. So even a real experience, even when you interpret something in reality, because you're not in la la land, you're focused on reality. You can see that this is a experience that you're having where somebody actually is doing something bad to you, when somebody actually is discriminating against you, and somebody actually is denying you of resources and opportunities. Okay, but in general, we have experiences like this. So we on your left side, you can see environmental events. Environmental events is everything that's around us that's going on, everything in our life. Okay. And those events that are occurring in our life that we are observing and that we are experiencing, they become sensory input. So they become our cognitions and our perceptions. Okay. And so things are going on around us. We perceive those things that are going on around us. And then the information from those events come into our awareness. And then we have to have an interpretation of them. And that interpretation, as we're trying to navigate these different events, as we're trying to interpret these different events, those become the self-talk. And again, the self-talk does not have to automatically be irrational ideas. But what happens on the next stage, all the way to your right, is that these emotional, these events that are occurring that we are interpreting create an emotional, they impact our emotions. And so we have an emotional response to them in the nervous system. Okay. And so they got this idea called rational emotive therapy. So based upon the ideas that the idea that emotions have nothing to do with actual events. Okay. So this is again, it's kind of slanted, but the idea of this is that you want to be able to interpret your thoughts. You want to be aware of your thoughts. You want to be aware of your emotions. You want to be aware of what feelings that you're getting from the things that are occurring around you in your life. How are they affecting you in terms of your quality of thoughts? How are they affecting you in terms of your perception of yourself? Do you start to doubt yourself? Do you start to use words to describe yourself like, I'm a failure. I can't do anything right, so on and so forth, right? Um, the main thing that we're talking about here is, are we keeping our interpretation of the events that are going on around us in the proper perspective, or are we doing self-blaming? You know, one of the biggest ways that this system, see, when you start talking about psychology and mental health for Black people, for African people, any type of oppressed people, but especially people of African descent who live in America, you have to understand it from the system of oppression, the system of white supremacy. You know, you have to read Frances Cress. I'm messing up her name. Um, Frances Cress Welsing, and look at her work that she did on the system of racism, white supremacy, and the psychological effect the impact that it's had upon our subconscious functioning, right? And so she did monumental work with that, and she was often rejected because of the work that she was doing because it was too deep for a lot of people, even Black folks. Okay, so uh, based upon the idea that emotions have nothing to do with actual facts. So oftentimes our emotions are not in tune or in touch with the actuality of what we experiences. And so we replace irrational ideas of beliefs. So what you want to do is replace irrational ideas or beliefs with realistic statements about the world. Okay, so this is part of the intervention. This is part of the therapeutic thing that you're trying to get to. So between the event and the emotions is unrealistic or is realistic or unrealistic self-talk. So your self-talk can be accurate or it can be inaccurate. Okay. So you have to see what type of you have to have an understanding. That's you have to have an understanding of how did your self-talk become conditioned the way that it is? I'm gonna get close deeper into that. Okay, so your own thoughts directed and controlled by you are what create anxiety, anger, and depression. So um, let's go further. Examples of irrational self-talk. I can't bear to be alone. And we've heard people say this. People that we work with, they be in when I mean work, I mean like in terms of clients. They be in abusive relationships, right? Because they can't bear to be alone. What's going to happen if they're alone? You know, they're not going to die. They're just going to be alone. They're not going to be, they could still function without having to be in an abusive relationship. People say things like, I never do anything right. But if they never did anything right, they wouldn't be able to cross the street without getting run over by a car. So they obviously they did do something right. So then when you're working with them, you say, well, these are the things I can see that you are doing right. These are positive qualities I can see that you have. You need to think about those things instead of thinking about these other things. The airplane wing is shaking. The plane is going to crash. So, you see people who have phobias about flying. You see people who have phobias about doing all kind of different things, right? Because they over emphasize, a small event and they interpret it as being something that's going to be catastrophic. Okay, how terrible it is to be rejected. So some people can't stand rejection. So in order to avoid rejection, they you know sublimate their own emotions, they sublimate their own needs to other people because they don't want to be rejected. They want to be part of something. They want to be part of this relationship. They want to be part of this group. They want to be part of this particular society and so on and so forth. I'll die if I don't get in. So somebody's trying to apply for something. Somebody's trying to do something. Somebody is trying to achieve whatever goal it is. And they think that if they're going to be so disappointed if they don't make it, that they're going to die. And they say words like that. And this is not a healthy way of, even if they don't literally mean they're going to die, but that's not a healthy way of doing of speaking of oneself. Okay, so somebody is doing something to me. That's another thing. At the root of irrational thinking is the assumption that things are being done to you. Now, let me qualify that because sometimes people are doing things to you, but you have to be able to make the differentiation between people doing things, between every negative event in your life being the result of somebody who's doing something to you, as opposed to these events in your life being the result of, you know, um, just other um, actualities that are occurring that has nothing to do with somebody is plotting against you. Okay. Um, so people say things that really got me down. I feel depressed. I feel tired. I feel drained because of what somebody else did. She makes me nervous. Places like that scare me. Being lied to makes me see red. Okay. So here we are again, we're giving power, we're giving our power away by saying that these other things are making us feel the way that we feel. But do we not, and even if there are actual events and people and circumstances that are having a deleterious effect upon what we're trying to do, does that mean that we have to accept the feeling that they are giving us? So that's where we begin to develop resilience, right? So when we working with people, we have to let them know that events happen in the world. Things are always happening. We simply experience things that occur in the world. When we experience the event, we engage in self-talk, experience an emotion that is resulting from the self-talk. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the emotion is that the emotion that we're having is literally the result of the event that occurred. It's also a factor in there of how do we perceive it? How are we taking it? Okay. So we have so a lot of people have a tendency to awfulize and absolutize. So awfulize, that means we're perceiving things as catastrophic, nightmarish interpretations of your experiences. Absolutize, everything has to be a certain way. You use words such as should, must, ought, always, and never. So those are sort of like absolutist types of words, you know. And we know that in reality that things can things can be less concrete than that. And one of the things that we have as African people, as Black people, is that we used to have something called the seven laws that gave us an understanding. It broke down the nature of the universe and the nature of the mind in such a way as to allow us to be able to interpret things properly and how to view things, because nothing in the universe is absolute. Nothing in the universe is so concrete that it cannot change, that it's immalleable. Okay. So the following are five steps you can take to dispute and eliminate irrational thoughts. Okay, be certain to include only the objective facts, not conjecture, subjective impressions, or value judgments. So that's part of our issues that we are having. If we have been conditioned to believe that we are less than, that we are less capable, then that conditioning is often coming from the fact of our oppression. That conditioning is often coming from how we were treated by our adults in our life, by our parents or teachers, and so on and so forth, right? And so we had to come to the point where instead of automatically thinking ill of ourselves or thinking lesser than ourselves, we determine um, the quality of and the value of who we are and what we need to do to achieve our goals and our objectives by simply looking at the facts. Okay. Write down your self-talk. So we should often take notes. State all your subjective value judgments, assumptions, beliefs, predictions, and worries. Note which self-statements have been previously described as irrational ideas. Okay. And so that's where keeping diaries, um, paying attention. So when you are, so let's say, for example, you're doing your meditation. You're sitting in your chair, you're laying on the floor, you sitting on the floor with your legs crossed, whatever you're doing, you're practicing your controlled deep breathing, and you start to become aware of your thoughts and your emotions. Oftentimes, thoughts and emotions begin to flood into you as you learn to relax. So learning to relax, it can also be it can be both therapeutic and beneficial in the sense of you feel better, but learning to relax can also open you up to becoming more aware of the various hidden thoughts, subconscious thoughts that you may have. Okay. And so as those things become revealed to you, as those feelings of inadequacy come up, then you write them down. And then once you write them down, you become aware of them. And once you become aware of them, you can take an evaluation as to the worthiness of those feelings, the worthiness of those ideas and interpretations about yourself. And then you are able to start to change them because you can sort of see, but this doesn't make any sense. Why am I feeling like this about myself? Oh, that's because of the way this teacher treated me when I was a child. Okay. So focus on your emotional response. Make a clear 1 or 2 word label, such as angry, depressed, felt worthless, afraid, and so on. So, you know, so you want to, get an understanding that, like, how are these emotions, how are these thoughts that's coming into you, your interpretation of these things? Oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. It made me feel bad. You know, just making note of this and becoming aware. Becoming aware of different things is part of the that's part of the healing process. Once you become aware of what you're going through, once you become aware of the thoughts that you're having, and just knowing that you're having particular types of thoughts, it becomes a therapeutic exercise because now that you're becoming aware of these thoughts, now that you're becoming aware of these emotions, it's much easier for you to say, oh, that doesn't make any sense. So now I'm going to let that go. Okay. So select the irrational idea that you want to dispute and evaluate if there's any rational support for this idea. And since everything is as it should be, given long chains of cause and effect, the answer is no. The problem must be endured and dealt with because it happened. It happened because all the conditions existed necessary to make it happen. And so what this is referring to is, for example, suppose you have money problems and you say, well, I got money problems because um, such and such and such and such, whatever such and such and such and such is. But in reality, it's like, did you do the things that you needed to do to save your money? Did you put away $5 a month? Did you put away $10 a month? Or do you spend all your money at one time once you get it? And then you're running a deficit every month. It doesn't mean that you are being paid what you're really worth. It doesn't mean that that there are no limitation in opportunities that you get because you're a woman, because you're a man, because you're black, because of whatever discriminatory type of things are taking place. But within the context of that discrimination, within the context of that lack of opportunity, do you optimize yourself by maintaining a positive energy about yourself and understanding that you can still achieve a high level of success, even within the context of the limitations that other people or that the social and cultural and political economic milieu that you operate in are placing upon you, within those restrictions. What can you do within the context of those things? So if you're working with people and they live in poverty, they have they get SSA check or whatever, they get public assistance, whatever they're getting. Um, they How do you help them to adapt to the fact that within the context of my situation, I want to still be as successful as I can be? Do I need to smoke? Do I need to drink? Do I need to engage in drugs? Do I need to engage in negative relationships? Do I need to engage in behaviors that put me at risk of incarceration? Do I have to do those things? Are there alternatives to these things? When I would work with young people who were at risk of becoming involved with the criminal justice system, I would say, look, let's start a business. Let's see what we can do within the context of our, limitations. How can we make money? How can we become entrepreneurs? How can we do different things without saying, oh, they won't let me do nothing? Well, sometimes you have to think outside the box and not say, oh, they won't let me do nothing, but thinking outside the box, what can I do within the context of the limitations that I'm under? An example I use sometimes is in this movie with Bruce Lee called Enter the Dragon. And in that movie, Bruce Lee was fighting. He was on an island where they was making drugs, and these big drug lords and stuff was there. So he infiltrated the island, went there. In one scene, he got into this big fight with about 200 different people, and he fighting them and fighting them and fighting them. But eventually, they overwhelm him and they push him down into a pit. And then when he goes down into the pit, he looks around and he sees that he can't get out of this pit because he's too deep. It's too much. He just can't get out. And so instead of starting crying and instead of getting panicky and stuff, Bruce Lee just immediately crossed his legs, sit down in the lotus position, and close his eyes. He started meditating, and he just released. He just said, "I've done everything I can do to to get out of this situation, but this is a situation I'm in. So I'm going to release. I'm not going to I'm not going to feel overwhelmed by this situation. I'm going to have a faith in a higher ability that I have, right?" And so that's what Bruce Lee did. And so eventually, because he released, he didn't give in to the temptation to let himself become overwhelmed by his circumstances. He was eventually a way eventually was made for him to get out of that situation. And so the point is that even in your darkest moments, you have to be able to have a faith to go within yourself, because within yourself, what do you have? This ain't part of the therapy, but this is part of my therapy. Within yourself, what do you have? You have the creator, you have the forces of nature, you have your ancestors, and you have your own internal creative power that you was born with, that the creator placed within you, that you can call upon to change your circumstances. And so that's what we get into our meditation. When we go into meditation, we are learning a skill that allows us to project our thought into the universe. And so they may sound like just some hocus pocus type of stuff, right? But in reality, everything begins with a thought. So when you go into your meditation, you do your breathing, you do your deep relaxation, you're able to project your own thought into the universe. You're able to project a vision of what you want to see occur, what you want to see happen. You project this into the universe, and it's like a seed being planted that's going to grow into a big tree. Okay. And so once you start to use your consciousness in such a way that you know that you can change your thought into an actual real material situation, that's where your power comes in at. That's why we as Black people still exist on the planet, because all the other people either disappeared or they barely, you don't even see them. When I walk around in the streets of Chicago, I don't see no Native Americans. I see a whole bunch of Black people. But I go to New York, wherever I go, I see Black people. Even though we have undergone the greatest level of oppression, the greatest level of uh, genocide, and so on and so forth. But we have an inner ability that allows us to not succumb to these negative conditions. And we continue to live, we continue to strive, and we have created culture that not only fuels us, but also is the foundation of the global culture throughout the world. When I go to Africa, when I go to New Zealand, when I go to Australia, when I go to Brazil, every place I go in the world, our culture is the foundation of everybody else's culture. Everybody on this planet is imitating Black people from America. And that's not an accident. So that's telling us that we have a certain power, we have a certain resiliency, and we have a certain truth that nobody else can duplicate. And so we need to look at those things. We need to look at ourselves not from a deficit perspective, but from a strength-based perspective to see that we have certain strengths that nobody else has except for us. And so what are we going to do to build upon those things? We have to recognize those things. We have to put those things to the forefront of our consciousness. And we do that through our meditation. When we cross our legs, when we sit down in our chair and we close our eyes and we breathe, we want to take this reality in, and we want to project that reality into the universe, into the cosmos. And we want to make that reality become material reality, not just a dream, not just an idea, but we can take our dreams and our ideas and we can make them we can make them manifest on the material plane of existence. Okay? So I feel like I'm preaching. Uh-oh, wait a minute, what'd I do?
You are preaching.
Huh?
You are preaching.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that's all I have to say then for today. So I appreciate y'all listening to me. Any questions, comments, anything y'all want to say?
Nope, no questions. I think we're ready now.
Okay. Well, let's go forth into the world and do our duty.
In terms of, do you send us a certificate or something? How does that work once we send you our video? Excuse me.
You're gonna get a certificate, yeah.
Okay. Alrighty.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Peace.
Have a good weekend.
You too.